If you thought you had the worst financial management skills, wait until you hear about these 5 project failures in Botswana. These are mega failures. Sitting at number 5, we have 4 lots which were bought by the government for office spaces at the Gaborone International Finance Park. They were purchased between 2005 September and 2006 July for 93 million pula. They were briefly officed to the Auditor General Office, the Department of Wildlife and National Parks, and the Criminal Investigation Department. It was not long before they realized they were renting a crime scene, for the government had bought unusable buildings with severe structural failures, so severe that they couldn't find a buyer through auction. How bad could this be? It gets worse because apparently the government's engineers had signed out on this. The Department of Buildings and Engineering Services had carried out a thorough inspection of the buildings prior to their purchase. At number 4, we have the Dibete police station. When it comes to swindling the government, contractors do damage even to those that enforce the law. Dibete police station was a multi-million pula project. It was officially opened in 2008. And by 2018, the building was unstable, evacuated, and planned for demolition. As the foundation circled, big cracks had developed, and in one instance, jailbirds were stuck in a holding cell due to the structural problems. How dare they do this to the police? At number 3, we have Orapa House. Originally, it was built and used by Botswana for diamond sorting. Its design and security features were top class for its time. At one point, it was the tallest building in Gaborone. In 2008, Botswana vacated and abandoned the building. In 2012, the government of Botswana expressed interest to buy the building and repurpose it as a tech hub. We have established the government of Botswana has a thing for stray buildings. But here's where things start getting shady. In 2012, the building's interior were worn out and dilapidated. It was estimated that it will cost more than 290 million to convert it from a high security vault into a usable office space. Moreover, an official valuation report placed it at 74 million pula. The Ministry of Lands and Housing initially offered De Beers 73 million pula, but De Beers countered with an 85 million price. Keep in mind, the valuation was at 74 mil. And finally, they settled on 79 million pula. Then they waited for about 3 years, and in 2015, the government decided to buy it for 88.4 million, including VAT. This makes sense if VAT is around 11% or so. Then nothing happens, and until 2023, the government injects 43 million for refurbishment. This has just been one big chess match. For the most part, it remains vacant. Number 2, we have the Palapye glass factory. At its inception, the glass factory was a beautiful story that could rival Cinderella. It promised around 1,000 jobs to utilize local raw materials like soda ash to create flat glass panels that could be sold to car manufacturers. This opened export markets. Its proposed production plan was a marvel in paper. They planned to have a railway from the factory and its own subpar station. The government, through Botswana Development Corporation (BDC), was to partner with a company called Shanghai Fengyu Glass to the tune of 500 million into the project. But here's the thing, this project implementation plan never stood a chance. There was poor oversight. An inquiry into the issue by Parliament alleges that Shanghai Fengyu was a shelf company. It had no track record in glass manufacturing. It had no technical expertise to operate this kind of project. The project was meant to cost 309 million, but eventually over 500 million was spent before the project was abandoned in 2013. Out of the 1,000 jobs that were promised, only about 5 security guards ever worked at the glass factory in Palapye. The word failure is an understatement. At number 1, we have Morupule B. If there is a heaven, this project will be the reason for Botswana being denied entry. All ghosts that might be haunting us is because of how we mismanaged Morupule B. Morupule B was budgeted for over 10 billion pula at its inception in 2007, the most project for its time. 4 units were to be constructed, with a combined maximum power output of 600 megawatt. Morupule B was designed to minimize toxic gas released into the environment, while helping the country become self-sufficient in power production. It was going to be a state-of-the-art. At the time, Botswana's electricity demand was just over 700 megawatt, so Morupule B ensured that local demand could be met. But what looks good on paper does not always translate to reality with these projects. First of all, the tender process was controversial. It was alleged that CNEEC, the company awarded the tender, was among the least qualified applicants. But somehow it ended up with a technical evaluation score above 90. After being shortlisted, their naivety began to show because they could not find a financier on their own as the tender had stipulated. Moreover, they were allowed to increase the bid price by close to 2 billion after the tender closing date in December 2007. Even worse, BPC went against the advice of DIS and the Chinese government that CNEEC was not qualified to handle a project of this magnitude. The problems intensified during development, as health and safety were a mere suggestion to CNEEC. They allegedly used raw sewage in their gardens. There was dumping of sewage and industrial waste into the surrounding area. Working conditions were extremely unsafe. Allegedly 2 people died in 2011 on site. A forensic audit report alleged close to 1 billion pula was misappropriated. There were duplicate invoices and shady contracts with CNEEC and BPC. By 2014, CNEEC was kicked from the mess it had created. The project costs had accumulated to 18 billion pula, way off budget. When it was commissioned in 2012, it was constantly being repaired. For the most part, only 2 units were working. At one point, less than 50 megawatts were generated from Morupule B. Repairs are still ongoing presently, and almost 16 years have passed since the project commenced. Botswana continues to spend close to 1 billion pula annually importing electricity. Between 2012 and 2025, over 18 billion pula had been used importing electricity.